of something. And when I thought about Glenn showing up tomorrow, my immediate reaction was, wow, we're going to belabor this topic for a while. And
Hey,
it's
Kayla,
not,
I really apologize for interrupting. My machine died. I had to restart Zoom. So, for the record, are you willing to repeat what you said from the outset? I really apologize.
oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, maybe I'll actually say it better. So, my initial reaction in real time this morning was, wow, we are going to belabor this topic, for probably about 10 days now. All right, 7, 8, 9, I don't know, 8 days. And this is the longest I've ever thought of, something like that. And I only say this because it is a regular occurrence. And I have not had the opportunity to speak with um, intelligent, thoughtful people such as yourselves, probably with a little bit more emotional intelligence than most people. Um, and instead of kind of brushing it off and saying, it's just another day in my life, um, I'm happy to to give you guys what you want to hear. So anyhow, I thank you guys for speaking your mind and speaking your piece, whether it was the day of the incident, the day after the incident, and this week. I appreciate the people who've actually gone online and watched the videos. Stacy, you weren't there. Eric, you weren't there. Even Glenn. And what I really appreciated is when Glenn had, you know, actually admitted that he hadn't watched the whole thing from the beginning. And so it makes me really happy that we're in this place right now where we could calmly, if this is indeed, another example of collaborating and, being a human and doing that well, whatever that may be, it is a prime example, just as you said, Sam, of what happens to most women on a daily basis, but a lot of other people in general, and not just women. Marginalized individuals, shy people. You're shy. You get an aggressive person kind of overpowering you, or you get these, I don't know, conflicted thoughts and ideas, and it just the way we show up as human beings. This is an example of kind of how to overcome that. But anyways, I feel like I'm kind of talking at you, and so that's my piece right now. We can certainly rehash everything, and I'm sure I'll have more feelings that bubble up that I'd like to articulate. But for now, I'm just happy to be here with you guys and hear what you guys have to say. And I'm done.
Thanks, Kayla. Anyone else with opening statements?
Yeah, I'll go next. And thank you, Kayla, for that. Um, and actually, I'm really glad. Well, I'm just going to share my experience. And what Kayla said is actually helpful, especially the part where she's saying she's kind of done with it. And I don't take it as a done thing, but for me, it moved me towards the next step in my evolution. So let me explain what I mean by that. When you first posted the video, I only watched part of it, which was Kayla speaking about how she felt unsafe and Josh saying how he felt unsafe. And I stopped right there because, to be honest, what I was thinking wasn't very nice, and I didn't want to go in that direction. To me, it reminded me of like conversations that I've heard between black women and white women where a black woman is explaining how she felt about something and then the white woman, oh, well, that happens to me too. And it really annoyed me because I found myself behaving in a way that I don't like when I see in others, which was blaming the victim. Because truthfully, when Josh said that, there was a part of me that said he must have done something to deserve it. That is honestly how I felt. Um, So I didn't listen to the rest until I saw the conversation with Glenn. And then I went back and I listened to the rest and I became even more angry. Um, and part of the reason that I became angry is because I felt that there was, well, actually, I'm not going to go into that. Instead, what I want to say is that when I recognized how angry I was, it told me that there was some more work that I had to be doing within myself. And that led me to something that I had written earlier, which was I call it from the How Do You Mend a Broken Heart collection. And the story was Cry Like an MF. And it was a little blog that I had posted on Facebook that later, after Gail comes, I'd like to read it out loud because the issue of women's voices not being heard, the way it affects me personally is that I've always had an issue trying to or giving myself permission to take the time of other people, like maybe people in this group, in a way that actually served me. And so I remember Josh brought it to my attention that a long time ago, I was asked, what's my project? Because everybody in the group was being asked, what's your project? And I said, I don't have one. My project is me. And I stand by that. But I bring it up because years ago, we used to have something called deep dives. I didn't have anything to dive deeply into because, like I said, my project was me. And I didn't really feel like anybody was interested in knowing who that me was or what was happening within that me. And that's what I believe is my gift to be able to share those observations, and at least for people that have some sort of alignment with the way I work, which would be creative people, sensitive people, female people, other people too, but mostly centered in those things. Okay, so I just said a whole lot of stuff, and the way it ties back to this is that I've been focused a lot on toxic masculinity and how it plays with toxic femininity because the two work together. And Kayla had asked a question that got sidetracked by the whole white thing, which I found very annoying because yes, he's a white man. If I look at him, that's how I'm going to see him. All right, wait, let me not get off track. Kayla asked a question, and I believe it was to get a different perspective of somebody who wasn't marginalized, like an Asian person may have been, or a female person may have been. And that was why she asked the question to the two other people. And the question was important. How did we get that way? And that's really what I always try to focus on, the roots. So when I went back to my own writing, which I do want to share later because it is a process and it's something that I use in grieving. It's a tool that I created for myself with the hopes that people could create their own. It brought me to the understanding, and Kayla, I hate having to say this, so don't bristle. As much as I've gone around defending women, protecting women, standing strong for women, I think that it's time that I recognize where women have been part of the problem. And it made me think about mothers and boundary setting. And so right now, I'm at the boundary setting part of it. And I'll stop now because, like I said, I do want to share a piece of work later, but after Gail comes on. So I hope that will be okay. Over.
I am not bristled, by the way. I love that. And to that point, Stacy, I was really happy when you actually said something to me. And I'm not here to make like alliances. Yeah. I'm not here to pit people against each other or take tallies or um, oust somebody else because the majority of people feel the way I feel. I'm not here for that. But it's so validating when you have when I look within myself and go, okay, am I crazy? You know, why do I feel like I'm swimming upstream? Why do I feel like I'm always fighting? I know this is wrong. I sometimes I can articulate it and sometimes I can. This time I could. This time people had a way to see it, and I could say, hey, am I wrong? Is there something I should have said? Is it wrong to say this? And so it was really, really nice to get that validation. And I just have to say, I personally don't get it that much. And I know a lot of people don't either. So I appreciated Sam and Stacy, for just outright saying something, to me, to Josh, and then I obviously appreciated both Eric, your honesty, and same with you, Barry. And that's important. And it just thank you, Stacy, for that. You are sticking up a lot for women,
Thank
and
you.
you too, Sam.
You're welcome. You just reminded me, I do want to just share one other thing. I had felt that from Josh, and not just Josh, but Colin as well a long time ago, but I never put it to being a woman. And I said why I thought it was. And I thought coming from them, it was because I didn't have a PhD. So I didn't think of it in terms of the fact that I was female, but I did feel that they were condescending in ways, but I attributed it to they didn't think I was as smart as they was or as educated as they were. And I have seen them behave like that. Well, I'll just stop. But it does tie in with a lesser degree of respect for people, some people.
All right. We all come up with our individual insecurities, but I can safely say that, Stacy, I share that same insecurity with you. Mine was battled with my family. So I got that battle, but I did get very heavily the battle of the woman. And I don't know if you guys remember, but I used to like laughingly call myself like the bimbo of the group until several of you were like, stop saying that. You were not a bimbo. You're very intelligent. And I was like, you know what? I think you're right. I should stop calling myself a bimbo because I'm not a bimbo, even though I think it's funny, you know. But I stopped showing up to places with you know, um, too much gaiety, I guess. I don't know. And I started to really take myself seriously and look within and think, you know what, this is an insecurity that I need to work on. So Stacey, I just wanted to say I resonate with you, and I don't know if it's because my gender or if it's because of a coincidence.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I just want to clarify that I requested Sam to send me the video from last Sunday where I participated a lot. And that was mostly for me to look at how I interact, for me to get some self-reflection. Now, he could have sent it to me, shared it privately, but he decided to publish it publicly. That's fine. Um, so um, one thing, yeah, I need to watch myself is if I'm doing mansplaining or trying to solve people's problems. Um, so if anyone sees that, I want to know if it's happening, if I'm going, because that is the way my brain thinks. I see, oh my, these people are in feeling something, and I may have some knowledge that could help, but I really tried not to go there. And I think from the video I saw, yeah, I really took my time with it, trying to really be present and listen, because I do care about all of us, and I want us all to feel safe. And now, since that day, my life has changed dramatically in 1 week because I took on a consulting assignment in AI. And now I'm in the belly of the beast learning the secrets. It's weird.
Wow.
Yeah. And what's interesting,
Congratulations.
yeah, thanks. Now, Sam knows about a book called The Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs. And there's a lecture on YouTube by Hal Abelson, who Barry knows from MIT, who taught a class in that book. And one of the first things they mention in that class is that programming is like magic. We cast spells, these cryptic strings that make things happen. And that is what I'm seeing about AI. We're creating prompts that cause magic to happen to create illusions of something, saying something interesting. And I'll leave it at that for now, but we could discuss anything.
Barry, do you have thoughts?
A couple. First of all, I put in the chat, there's a book by Alan Watts called The Wisdom of Insecurity. And you can basically get the whole gist of it just from the title. The emotional state of insecurity suggests that you don't have yet mastery of the material, the topic of the issue. And the awareness of lack of mastery is a motivation to do some homework, some research, some study. And that's the point of the wisdom part, is that negative valence emotions are a suggestion to do some research, some reading, some homework, some thinking, to transform the insecurity into some degree of confidence that you know what you're talking about after all, and not just stumbling in the dark. The other point that came to mind is this business of how much time you spend thinking about things that are worth spending time thinking about. And I often spend weeks, sometimes months, sometimes decades thinking about some topic that's really a challenging topic. If I haven't thought about something for more than a week, it probably isn't a terribly significant issue that is probably just going to go by the wayside sooner or later. And I remember once the director of my center at Bell Laboratories once said to me, he says, Barry, he says, you make people think. And I reacted, I said, Jim, is that good or bad? Was that a compliment or a criticism? And he didn't answer. But I, and as a result, I thought about it for quite a bit of time. But the best way that I know of to make people think is to ask really good questions. If you can ask really good questions, that will stimulate people to think. And so that's kind of a watchword of my career is, how do you ask really good questions that have the power to make people think, but in a good way, not in a way that annoys or irritates them. So those are my two comments on what's
Okay. Thank you, Barry. Stacy, you have your hand up, and then I also would have my virtual hand up.
Okay, I just want to respond to Barry, otherwise I would let you go first. I want to speak to what he just said about insecurity, because I think the way it, and I don't want to speak for Kayla, but at least for me, it wasn't so much about, so the insecurity sometimes, so when it's coming from this suppression of the female voice that we're talking about. I don't even want, I'm going to use the word feminine energy instead, because this could also apply to certain men. But when it comes to suppression of that energy, at least for me, it's not always necessarily about being insecure that I don't know enough or that I'm wrong. It's about that I recognize that other people are not going to understand and recognize. And the insecurity is that I believed their message instead of my own inner wisdom. So I just want to make that distinction because it's a little bit different. What Barry's saying goes for the general population, and I'm saying the other piece of it is when we deny our own wisdom because we're not strong enough or secure enough based on our environment to stick with it. I hope that made sense.
Sorry, I have to take a 3-minute detour. I'll be right back. Okay.
Maybe then I'll respond a bit to Stacy. One of the other things that I find myself doing, especially as a scientist, as an educator, is identifying misconceptions, whether they're individual misconceptions or popular misconceptions. And one of the things that concerns me is when somebody who has political power is laboring under a misconception, they can establish requirements which are contraindicated in an academic sense, that they don't make sense. It makes sense to them because they're laboring under a misconception. And if I do have an insecurity, it's the challenge of dealing with people who are, number one, laboring under misconceptions, which are academically revealable, but not trivially revealable, difficult to explain, and managing to overthrow or override a misconception. And I will be the first to admit that that's a recurring unsolved problem, not just in my life. It's a recurring unsolved problem in human civilization, is how to deal with people in power who are laboring under misconceptions. If I'm laboring under misconception, I know what I need to do. I need to go and crack a book or do some research or something to resolve it. The problem is when other people are laboring under misconceptions, then I have no idea how to overthrow a popular misconception.
Well, that's why I thought Kayla's question that we didn't discuss was so important, which was how did we get to this point? And that's what I'm interested in uncovering because these people that abuse power, they don't just get there overnight.
Yeah.
And I think we should recognize from the very beginning how that starts because that's something, and again, I use the word boundaries, and I think we all play a role in it, but we haven't identified what it is. And that was the importance to me of Kayla's question. Where does it start?
Yep.
Eric?
Yeah. So what I did I asked Grok to help me understand that mindset. Like, why would people donate to this woman? And I just posted a link to Grok's response, and that was also in the Facebook group. But it shows the how conservatives are thinking, why they might be sympathetic to her fundraiser. And so it's things like cancel culture, free speech, double standards, victimhood narratives. So there's a lot going on in the culture. And then there's some references to some, so that's AI analysis of what's going on. And a lot of this is due to filter bubbles, where people get their news and who they associate with, and so there's a lot of polarization in the country that's led us here. And I just don't know what to do with this information. It's just that that's how um, I was trying to make sense of it.
Can
Hmm.
can I address that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to say something that AI cannot come up with. I don't think AI can cannot come up with this, so I'm going to share with you. I think some of that has to do with what I tried to explain in the beginning about myself, where I found myself being really angry. And it wasn't until I took the time to step back and figure out where the anger was coming from, because anger always comes from pain. Underneath anger is always pain. So while I agree with what the AI said about the people that were aligning behind her, they were doing it for reasons based upon cancel culture and all those other things. What's lacking is their inability to address the root of their anger in the first place, as most of us tend to be unwilling to even look deeper because, like I said, there's pain underneath it. But I want to just repeat, I don't see how AI would ever be able to come up with an answer like that because AI has no emotions. And emotions are part of the equation, even though the masculine energy doesn't always recognize that piece. And Doug Breitbart and his uh, colleague Joanna wrote an article that he placed in the chat, which is very similar to what, not similar, it's different. It's connected to the piece that I wrote that I want to share with you later. And I really urge you to read his article, to read that article. Everybody, to read that article.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a clinical synonym for emotion that we use in academia, and the synonym is affect. Um, and non-living systems, technology systems, um, can be subject to affective states, as they can be affected by stimuli. And in particular, if an AI says in one paragraph asserts A, and a later paragraph asserts not A, and you point out that it has now asserted two things which are mutually exclusive, it will be affected by that revelation. And it will, in some sense, admit that it can't be right. It'll, in some sense, make an apologetic statement and possibly try to resolve which of the two statements is reliable and which one is unreliable. But it will be affected. And so we use the word affect when we don't want to use the word emotion, because we like to think that, that humans and maybe mammals have emotions, but non-living systems have affect. Things, your automatic cruise control on your car is affected by all kinds of signals that tell it, oh, it's time to speed up, it's time to slow down, it's time to do this, it's time to do that. And those affective states are very, very real. And whether you analogize them to emotions or not is sort of an academic point. But metaphorically, they function in much the same way. Go ahead, Sam.
I just want to pop back a little second to Kayla and Stacy and say, are we on topic or have we digressed off topic?
I think we're exactly where we need to be.
Yeah, we're pretty much on topic.
Okay, then I have two responses to Barry and Stacy. One is AI pretends. So AI looks at the literature and says, oh, when someone says they're angry, it looks at the 50,000 or other instances where people have been angry and say, okay, so this is the common response. So yes, it does not have emotions, but it pretends to respond the way it's seen humans respond. And so it's very, very duplicitous in some way. Because you could say, oh, yeah, an emotional person might actually say that, but it's a pattern that AI has picked out of the corpus of all knowledge. So that's response number one. Response number two is this thing about God, I keep doing this. My brain cells are getting old. I had 2 points, and rather than
Welcome to
writing
the
down,
club.
I just forget it. I'll just leave it at that 1 point for now.
Yeah. I have a slightly different perception of the source of anger from Stacy. My observation is that anger rises from feelings of unfairness or unjust. If something's unjust or unfair, that's a very likely situation that will stimulate an angry response. And you can you can analytically determine that something is unjust or unfair if it's unequal in a way that is sort of arbitrary and capricious. So I think an AI can recognize, identify, diagnose, and appreciate anger in the sense that yes, there's an underlying unfairness or injustice or inequality that is unsupported by any rational analysis. So it can certainly understand that um, that somebody will express displeasure at an unfairness or injustice, and for humans, we'll say, well, they're just angry about that, and that's fine. I mean, you can just another synonym for recognizing an unfair situation.
Okay. Thanks, Barry. Kayla has her hand up, and then I did respond. I did remember my second point, but Kayla first.
Okay, so to that, I'm really happy about this conversation because Sam, didn't you and I talk about, so after the whole incident, I guess Josh had wanted to run it through an AI, and we started talking about like AI and the nuances that it does not pick up.
Mhm.
Like, would AI recognize, that somebody was yelling, or would it say, so and so said this 5 or 6 times? You know, from what I understand, Sam, that's what we were discussing about AI and its ability to pick up emotions. And so, going back to what you said, Barry and Stacy, about what is the root of this anger? Where does it come from? I don't know if you read my rant. That's the longest rant I've ever written on, a chat. I was a little embarrassed, but at the same time, I was happy it was out there because I am interested in those stories. Okay. And that was like my whole point of asking, Josh and Barry these questions. Like, what is the root of that? What do you think? How do you know somebody who, grew up in a racist household? Do you know if somebody was slighted by somebody of color? Do you know, how like is that person a descendant of, a plantation, inheritance? What happened? And I feel like, AI could probably get that too if it had access to that story, those memories, and that is like a true connection, to human beings. So as I was saying, all of this abstract is fantastic. I'm not knocking it down. We're all talking about it. Yeah, it's we're all in that same playing field where we can be abstract with our own thoughts, but most people is very difficult for them to, and so therein lies, using your emotions, almost weaponizing your emotions to act on something when you really should kind of take the time to think abstractly at that moment. But I don't even know if that makes sense because now that I'm saying it, it doesn't make sense to me. So, anyways, I'm done. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I just want to make one additional comment on what Kayla said. She and I had a conversation after the Saturday session last week. And I did think that it would be very useful to run these recordings through AI, but I was in my mind thinking eventually, because to my knowledge, what they do right now is they get a YouTube video, they get the transcript, and then they act on the transcript. They don't actually look at the video, to my knowledge. Okay. So what they would miss, if that is true, they would miss interruptions. They would miss yelling. They would miss body posture. They would miss, backgrounds. they would miss, a bunch of stuff which is important in the dynamics of conversation, especially from last Saturday. So all they would have is a transcript that would then say, Josh said this, or Kayla said this, or Sam said this, but they don't indicate that, hey, Kayla's sentence was cut off, or Sam's sentence was cut off, or, I yelled over Josh, or Josh yelled over Kayla, or whatever. They wouldn't have picked up any of that because that's not in the transcript to date. Now, eventually, and this is why I was thinking in my mind, eventually, that will change. These AIs will be smart enough to pick those nuances out of video and audio. But as far as I know today, they're not. So that was point number one, just to respond to that reference that Kayla made. Number two, the second point that I originally was going to make after I forgot it, is that when Barry pointed out that, hey, sometimes AI asserts A, and then later on it asserts not A. Sorry, a dog is being noisy. Then I would say, Barry, it's not that it's dumb. It's being very human-like. Humans do this all the time. Humans don't know when they actually hit a contradiction until somebody points it out to them, typically. Okay? So I don't think it's a fault of AI. I think, humans and AI process patterns and contradictions very, very similarly from that respect. So I just want to say that's not, in my mind, an adequate criticism of AI because that's how humans work. Unless humans are self-aware enough to say, oh, wait, I said A before 5 minutes ago, and now I'm saying not A. Let me figure out what I really meant. AI doesn't quite do that yet until you go back to it and says, hey, you just said something that contradicted yourself. It's a slight difference, but the initial phenomenon that Barry was pointing out does happen with both humans and AI. Over.
They're trying to add that so it does self-checking, because initially it didn't do self-checking. And when people pointed out, this phenomenon, then some of the developers said, okay, we need to check to make sure that we're not contradicting ourselves within two paragraphs. And humans sometimes will recognize that they're contradicting themselves, and sometimes they won't. And sometimes a third party has to point it out. Sometimes you don't. If you're really doing logical analysis, you'll say, let me try hypothesis A, I get this conclusion. Let me try hypothesis B, I get a contradictory conclusion. They can't both be true. So if you're really being logical about it, you'll be attending to that. And if you're sort of cavalier, you won't be attending to it. You'll just sort of pick one that sort of you like and forget about the other one. And that's where you end up with misconceptions. Undiagnosed misconceptions. Go ahead, Sam.
So now my next response is really going back to what I think Kayla was trying to do last Saturday, which is trying to elicit stories, elicit personal experience, so that we can actually figure out where did it go off the rails? How did it go wrong? Okay. On the other hand, I'm not, and I'll say this, I'm not a white man. So the question wasn't directed at me. Indirectly, I might have some thoughts, but I was not directed to respond to that because I've thought about this a lot, okay? And I'm probably wrong on most of it, but as a non-white man, I have my own experiences, okay? So anyway, when Kayla said in her last offering that she wanted to hear the stories, right? Not so much the abstract theory, but the stories. I think that was trying to get back to, let's say, what was it? 168 hours ago, plus or minus a couple, of what Kayla was really trying to ask in last Saturday's session. Over. By the way, the dogs making noise was part of Gail waking up. She's trying to wake up in time for the 9 o'clock appearance.
I'll point out that dramaturgy is a very powerful component of human culture. Stories and plays and dramas and musical presentations. And one of the things that they do is they focus and reveal and amplify some of these conflicts. And as a result, the observers become aware of them at a sort of a meta level. And so you do this meta analysis. And well, So I listen a lot, for example, to Terry Gross on Fresh Air. She has a lot of actors and performers on, and she often features scenes which are emotionally volatile scenes where the characters are yelling at each other. And of course, they're actors, so they already know that they're going to be yelling at each other. They're not really angry themselves, only their characters are expressing anger. And then they discuss sort of the whole point of this dramatic scene. And and not only do viewers like me or listeners like me gain some insight into the root of these dramas, but even AIs can read classical literature, uh, read the scripts of dramas and the meta-analyses or the critics' analyses, and get some insight as to the root of these emotionally volatile transactions.
Kayla has her hand up.
Yeah, that's why people love watching movies, yeah. That's why people are sitting in front of their television all day long, and it's honestly, it's really important, especially in conversation. And I'll say this, when it came to last week, it shocked me, it surprised me, um, because I've had instances where I was stereotyped because I'm Asian. And I think I told you this, Sam, but I remember I was in Costco and some white lady, came up to me and she said, "Excuse me." And she said, "Can you tell me about this?" She wanted rice. And she's like, "Can you tell me the difference between all of this rice here?" Right. And honest, I thought it was really funny because I was in, a very predominantly white neighborhood in Costco. We always call it the bougie Costco because it's in Westlake Village. And there's a lot of, you know, um, upper class people who shop there. And this lady straight up comes up to me again. "Can you tell me the difference between this rice?" And the hilarious part about it was I had absolutely no idea. Okay. I didn't, I eat rice all the time. Do I pay attention to it? No, not really. Lately, if I have actually had a preference for Japanese rice, but, you know, I will cook rice with anything and I don't care what it is. It's rice. And that's how I saw it. And I looked at it, I said, "I'm really sorry. I can't tell you the difference. You got like the most whitewashed Asian in the store. I can't tell you anything. I'll eat it, but that's it. I'm the same as you. I have no idea what the difference in this brand of rice." And she looked really annoyed. She walked away from me. Like, "I'm sorry, I could not be that stereotypical person you wanted me to be." But I'm at that point where some of it's not a reflection of me, it's a reflection of her. And it's not a bad reflection. She probably did the right thing by asking an Asian woman. Unfortunately, she got me. But again, there takes a certain amount of maturity, and leaning in and worldliness to just, take it kind of like for what it is. So it really, surprised me when Josh got angry for being called a white guy, because I really wanted to see his story. I would really wanted to see, where they came from and how, he grew up. It fascinates me just as it fascinates me about how, Stacy might grow up or Sam. And so that was really the my question had absolutely no harm in it from my point of view. Anyways, I'm done. I acknowledge Stacy's hand is up, so I
I
lower
have a
my hand.
question. I have a question for you, Kayla. It
Uh-huh.
might sound like a silly question, but as you know, I'm very focused on words and the energy of words and the reactions of both parties. My question to you is, do you think it would have been different if she said, "Do you know," as opposed to "Could you tell me"? Do you think you would have had a different reaction?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. That's what that is what I suspected. And I don't think I'm not sure if other people recognize the difference in that. Maybe the people here do, I don't know. But thank you for confirming that for me.
But Stacy, since we're on the record, and there are a lot of people, hopefully, not maybe a few dozen, who might actually watch this later, would you like to just say one more on that?
Sure, very quickly. Is saying, could you tell me, is automatically making an assumption about Kayla, and Kayla is going to receive that as feeling as if an assumption is being made about her. But if she says, do you know, then it feels like somebody is coming with curiosity. Is that accurate,
Yep.
Kayla?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
good.
Agreed 100%.
Yeah, I want to say language is very important. And I want to relate it, like Barry was talking about drama, movies. Well, the Star Trek series is a good um, mirror for humanity to see how different aliens interact with each other, how we interact with aliens. And there was an episode where they dealt with language, where um, yeah, two guys were on a planet and they couldn't understand each other. They had to figure out a new language, and so yeah, it's like a mirror to us. It was a mirror in the 1960s, really showcasing attitudes and breaking through stereotypes. So, have we come far since then, or have we gone backwards? It's a good question. And why, if we have gone backwards, what are the factors that led to that? And my opinion is social media, we should really understand how the impact that that has had. And I feel like it had a personal impact on my life with the person I was in a relationship with. And the people get addicted to it and they get in these bubbles and different ways of thinking. It separates people if it's not, if you're coming in without enough emotional intelligence. So it's complex, but I mean, I admire Sam for putting these meetings together to explore these topics and yeah, seeing where we are. Go ahead,
Well,
Stacey.
Kayla raised the point. I want to make sure we don't miss that point.
Say it again, Sam. Specifically, which point?
I said Kayla was the one last week who was trying to raise the question about hearing from white men their stories, their history. Okay. Thank you for, acknowledging that I'm making this available, but Kayla was the one that actually brought up the issue that got so quickly sidetracked.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't happen if you didn't post your Zoom link. So to acknowledge that.
Okay, thanks. And if I may, Eric, you had made a point earlier before asking for me to send you the video from last Sunday personally. Did I do something that you didn't expect or wrong? Because normally all of these sessions are posted.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, usually it takes some time. Yeah, but I wanted to review it, and yeah, I yeah, I just wasn't sure how the way your policy.
I was
That's
just
fine.
trying to, respond to you and do what I normally do as quickly as possible and as quote unquote as Doge-like efficiently as possible.
Okay, thank you.
That was what was surprising is how rapidly it appeared compared to normal, which takes off weeks to.
I'm trying to be responsive to Eric.
It was a hot topic.
And on that last Saturday, I was trying to be responsive to get some feedback from other people. I mean, I know that at certain points, I acted like an asshole, okay? And so I personally also want some feedback on how that went. So that's why I posted it so I could actually share it with others.
And I have to say, Sam, that's very brave of you because I know I acted like a bitch and I say things that's part of the reason why, not the whole reason why, but a good chunk of the reason why I'm very quiet is because what's in my mind oftentimes is not cool. You know, I laughingly tell my friends sometimes, like, there's certain people that shouldn't be slapped, but I want to slap them, and in my head, I just want to be like, if you were in front of my face, I'd fuck your ass. But you can't say that, yeah? You know, you can't inflict violence on somebody. But those are my thoughts, and it came out, and I hated that. You know, yeah, he probably deserved it, but still, it's not cool. It's a very shameful thing. And so, I appreciate you, Sam, for saying, "Can you give me feedback?" Because it's hard for me to ask for feedback on that because I know it sucked. So, anyways,
If I may respond to that one, I always love this thing about Lincoln. I'm not sure he said it, but it's been attributed to him. And Lincoln was saying, and he used the word man there. Okay, so I have to say person, but he said, you can tell the measure of a man, but what makes him angry. And I really, really, really like that. That's one of my central guiding principles. Because getting angry at petty shit, yeah, you're basically just a dumbass. Okay. But if you get angry at injustice, I think that's a different quality of anger.
Systemic injustice,
Yes,
not just happenstantial, but it's systemic.
right.
mm-hmm.
So, Kayla, I don't think all anger is to be taken negatively. Certainly as a character aspect. I think, for us to get angry at injustice, I don't know if Martin Luther King ever said he was angry. I get the sense though that he was. Malcolm X certainly was. There's certainly a number of others. Louis Farrakhan was certainly angry. So they're angry at the injustice. And I don't think that's unjustified.
It's called righteous anger, among other things.
So I think when you express anger at what was happening, when your voice and other voices were being oppressed and the whole conversation was sidetracked, I think that anger was merited. Over, Stacy.
Yeah, thank you. So to move it to the next step, so Barry was right on about the anger and the injustice and women's voice. For me, women's voices being suppressed. But what I had to recognize for me is when I suppress myself based on the society I'm living in. So to go back to the drama therapy and all that, my work is to try to find a creative way for people to access their own emotions and heal their own pain. And I'm feeling like I really want to share this story because Kayla was asking for stories, not just story. I don't think she meant just stories of men. I think she meant stories of people, men, women,
Mm-hmm.
both. Yeah, that's okay. I just want to make sure because well, that's one of the other things that happens. We tend to focus on looking at the male side of things, whether it's what makes them bad or what makes them good. That's less of what's important. Even in health, the research is always done on men, for their medical problems, things like that. So bringing it back, I mean, I put the Google Doc in the chat for something that I would like to read because it is my story, but I did it because this is an exercise that I had hoped to be able to share with other people. They can do it for themselves. It's one of many exercises. Can I do that now, or do you want me to wait, Sam?
It is 9 o'clock, so I was about to say after you were done that I was gonna go see if Gail was ready. So if I disappear, that's what I'm doing, okay?
Okay, well, maybe I'm going to wait though, because I would like to share it with Gail.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't you say you wanted to share it with her? So, you know,
But
I
I
wanted
did.
you to share it from the beginning, but
Aw. Thank you. I didn't, again, it's like a balancing act between trying to assert ourselves and trying to be respectful of the other people in the room and where they might want to go. And I think those of us that have a lot of feminine energy tend to step back a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost natural. I find myself doing that. Um, and I don't think I've ever broken it. When I have either a male friend or a partner, I'm always a few feet, maybe 1 or 2 feet behind them, never next to them. That's how I walk. Even with my sons, I am always just 1 or 2 feet behind them. And it's lately I've caught myself more, but and especially with my kids, I usually go ahead. But you know, it's strange how all of that. I don't know if it's passed down or if it was a learned experience. Anyway,
And I think it's important to point out that it's different for everybody. Like for me, I will never walk behind somebody, but at the same time, I've had to make myself smaller for the men in my life. I mean, I remember talking to my dad about something, and I was explaining to him something that was going on in my marriage and how I had helped my ex with a business thing, and he said to me, "Wow, he must be so happy to have you." And I was like, "No, he's not." It's like it was as if he always saw it as a competition. So I had to be less smart or, it's, but, an important point, and this is a general thing, and I do believe it's factual. The more we hold back stuff, by the time we let it out, it's released with a charge. And that's why it's so important not to nitpick, but to release things when they're still small enough that they're not painful to those around us. But it's like
mm,
partly we can't help it because it's so hard for us to do that we have to push it out hard.
hmm
There
and
was a,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say there was
Okay.
a famous meme involving Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, in which there's a photo of him walking like 2 paces in front of her, and that was analyzed in the media for like weeks about whether or not that was for real or whether that was photoshopped or whatever. But it was a big deal about that they weren't shown walking side by side.
I see Gail's on.
Oh, there she
Okay,
is.
so I just got Gail on the Zoom session. So this is Gail from here. Gail's just going to say hi for now.
Hi
Yeah,
there.
Hi.
Hey.
happy to have you here with us.
Thank you. I love your
Right.
picture with your puppers. Cute.
Aw, thank you.
All
So,
right. Don't mind me. Continue with what you guys are doing.
Well, I was just thinking maybe Stacy or Kayla could summarize real quick
Yeah.
where we've been.
Yeah, catch me up.
Is that
Kayla,
okay?
you do it.
Me? Well, I'm not really good. Okay, I'll try, and then you guys fill in if it doesn't work. So, anyways, Gail, I'm kind of over it with the topic, but not in a bad way. It's just this is how I usually
Right.
am. I don't fixate on. I try not to because it's really
Okay.
painful when you fixate on
Yep.
one
Yep.
negative thing for such a long time. Yeah, I'm
I was wondering
ready to
that. I
let
was
it
wondering
go.
if you would, if you even wanted to hear my thoughts on it at this point, or if you just wanted to just
No,
not.
we want to hear it. No, we want
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
thoughts.
Okay. Well, first of all, what I noticed was in the beginning of the call last Saturday, and I didn't hear the entire call, so correct me if I'm wrong about some of the stuff.
Mhm.
But there was a point where you were describing how women feel unsafe,
Uh-huh.
um, and I thought that that was really brave of you to talk about because it's not talked about a lot. It's not talked about enough, you know. And
Mhm.
and then the next thing you know, it felt to me like you became unsafe in the actual call. So it was just really ironic. It really bothered me. Um, I mean, you were trying to bring up an uncomfortable truth and asking an uncomfortable question, and you were trying to ask, where did we go wrong? And you were trying to ask the men that. You did say white men. I don't fucking care. It doesn't bother me one bit. I mean, it's something that every man, and particularly white men, should be asking themselves right now. Why does half of the population have to fear the other half? Right? I mean, how many times when a man goes on a date, are they told to watch their drink or, don't go back home with a woman because she might attack you or something like that? But men are not taught that. When I was at university, we were told to do the buddy system as women, but young men weren't told to do that, right? Because of sexual assaults. So it's an uncomfortable truth that women are not safe around men in many cases on the daily. And I thought it was just incredibly rude that none of the men, other than Sam, I will commend him for that. And believe me, when he steps out of line, I'll tell him to. But that just really fucking pissed me off. I couldn't believe it. And then Josh, I know he's not there. I was really hoping he'd be here today. Yeah, and he's a fucking liar because the first time I joined GCC, the first and only time other than today, I wasn't on camera, and he assumed I was Asian and made a really snide remark about Asians, and it just totally turned me off, you know. And then he has the audacity to get all indignant about being considered a white man when, for all intents and purposes, that's how he looks and that's how people treat him and think of him. So he has all the privileges of that, and he knows it. And then what really fucking pissed me off after that, he pretends to be crying. He wasn't crying. He was just mocking you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Like, he's a fucking dick. I'm sorry. Okay, I was gonna try not to swear so much. Jesus fucking Christ. What an asshole. Okay.
You missed Sam's opening where he's saying how this is recorded. So I just want to remind you of
cool.
that.
Yeah, no, I want to be on the record saying this. Hey, Josh, when you hear this, you're a fucking dick. How about that? Yeah. Sorry. I mean, it really pissed me off, Kayla. No, I'm not. I know you don't need me to come to your rescue. I'm not trying to do that. I'm personally pissed off because I personally have been through the shit that you talked about and worse at the hands of men. Okay. I'm not trying to be a man hater. All right. But then, and I don't know, Barry, if you're there, but it kind of upset me a little bit because you said you're unpieced. Well, guess what? Kayla was unpieced. She literally was crying. I was unpieced.
Yeah, we all were.
Right. But I mean, you have the ability to step in and say something, but you didn't. You were just more concerned about yourself and how unpieced you were.
Gail,
you weren't thinking about what Kayla was going through.
Gail, respectfully, I just want to say that it's funny because Kayla asked me about this, and I think you're making an assumption that Barry had that ability, and I'm not really sure. You don't know Barry that well, but I do.
I don't.
And I'm not sure he had that ability to step in on any
Sam
other
had the ability to do it, and he
I tried 3 different gambits. They all failed.
All right. Maybe I need to rewatch it again. I apologize, Barry, if I'm off.
It's not even that. I think you have to understand Barry and how he works better. We're all capable of different things.
Fair enough. But I can still have my opinion on the situation. And Barry, I'm sure you're an awesome person, but it would have been cool if you, let me just say it this way. It would have been really cool if you had maybe raised your voice a little bit more, if that would be possible, because women have been saying these things for fucking ever, and nothing seems to change. And all it takes for evil men to succeed is for good men to sit by and say nothing.
Like I say, I tried 3 different gambits. They all failed.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that.
And you know what? I'm going to point out that it is important that Gail is saying this, and I'm glad that we're all mature enough is actually in this room to be able to, speak without, speak in a respectful manner. So I appreciate that. But it's important because the bystander effect, a lot of people don't realize they can say anything. A lot of people don't realize perhaps that person couldn't. You brought a good point, Stacy. We all know Barry. Gail doesn't know Barry, but
I
yeah.
don't. You're right. Yes.
Maybe there's a lot of other people that you don't know couldn't, but to those people who could, yeah, say something. I often tell Maxwell that, even though nobody says something for him, which trust me, I get, violent. I get violent inside when I see that he's bullied and nobody stood up for him. And I know these are kids, but I do get violent inside. And so I tell him, you always stick up. You always say something for the person who can't. Always tell the truth. Do your part. Because we need more people like you. We need more people with the courage, to step in. And I'm not saying Barry didn't have any courage, because clearly he tried 3 times.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I got to rewatch it then. I seriously apologize, Barry, if I missed some of those attempts that you made. I believe you. I was probably just pissed off at listening to Josh. But the bystander effect is real. It's a problem, and that's how a lot of things go south and sideways in our society. But I had a voice, and so I wanted to just come and say, hey, that was just really uncool, and I support you. I think it was really brave of you to even bring the subject up, frankly, and I think it's something that should be talked about. But what bothered me is Josh derailed the whole conversation, and you guys couldn't even get into the meat of it, So that was a bit frustrating.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that the session happened, because it pointed it out,
Yeah.
I feel like it was such a hot topic. Sam, it was such a hot topic because there is so many facets that could be said from this, especially in the current state of what's going on in the United States here about our people who are very oppressive. And it's important to recognize that. And it's important to recognize individual oppressive behavior, see where it comes from, how to stop it. What might you have said differently? What bubbled up for you? How can you do it better next time? So yeah, I appreciate it. I love that you're here and you're saying the FUs, girl. Dude, I'm
sorry. I've dropped a lot of F-bombs. And Barry, if your ears are unpieced, I apologize. I'm joking. I'm totally joking, Barry. Yeah, go ahead, Sam. He's trying to get back to his computer because he had to set up my Zoom thing. No, thanks for listening to all my F-bombs, because I really felt like I need to get that out. I mean, women don't get to say this that much. And it's very rare that you get a couple of men sitting around somewhat captive as an audience and you get to say this,
Yeah.
And I really felt you when you were like, because I've been feeling this lately. As I get older, the attention wanes from men, right? And it's so peaceful. It's so fucking peaceful. I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm looking forward to being 80 years old.
I'm not.
Holy shit. This is amazing. Why couldn't I live all of my life like this?
Yeah.
I just, I mean, I think this group is really cool. I've listened to a lot of your stuff. I don't usually join, obviously, but I was really hoping that there would be more insight, because you asked the question, where did we go wrong? And then the whole freaking conversation got derailed after that because Josh needed to be a victim. So, anyways, I was hoping for some insight on that.
We did talk about it on Sunday, and I came to the conclusion that, we're in good company, which is a good thing, because, Eric, I don't want to speak totally for you, but you mentioned that, you just didn't grow up in that. I think you too, Barry, and so it made me realize, well, I guess not every, this is where the stereotyping does come in. I guess not every white person has that 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 racism in the background. Maybe they truly
No,
didn't grow up with it, and maybe I
right.
need to
Well, I
ask different
noticed it.
people.
I
Yeah,
did.
I didn't. Go ahead.
y-
Sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I did notice racism around me when I was growing up, and there
Mm.
was an inner conflict in me. Okay, yeah, how do I react? I I was very shy when I grew up, and I really appreciate Gail talking today because it makes me reflect on yeah, what is the real situation? Like how would I recognize somebody else being unsafe in the future? And how would I react going forward? So I appreciate you bringing up the honest emotions of how you felt seeing this happen.
Oh, thank God. Wow. Cool. That's the best answer I could have hoped for.
From a white man. I'm just kidding. Sorry, sorry. Too soon?
That,
Too soon? Okay.
oh my God. Oh. From a white woman. I'm saying it as a white woman.
No, I'm talking about Eric.
I know.
And now I'm mansplaining.
I'm saying thank you as a white woman. Just kidding.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
thank you. No, no, that's awesome. That was kind of thank you. I mean, it's all I think women are have been trying to get men to start thinking about, And look, we understand you guys are not raised that way. We understand that you don't know unless you're told that this is the experience young girls have, young women, and even older women. So it's nice to be heard. It's nice to be heard.
So,
May I also add, and I hope this is not inappropriate, but I really feel that because this has been going on so long, that it's really not going to change unless, and I'm going to use the phrase again, unless white men actually understand this and do something. Because right now, so much power is concentrated in white men in the United States, and probably elsewhere as well. And the source of power is what controls culture. And right now, that power is not with minorities, and it's unfortunately not with women. Over.
I know I
Yeah.
said this to a few people, but the federal government is restricting use of certain words, and
God,
unfortunately,
that pisses me off.
the word woman is in there,
God, that pisses me off. Sorry, I
and
interrupted.
female, so all the
Yeah.
other like quote unquote woke words are there, yeah.
Kayla, will you say that
Mm.
more explicitly? Because I think Gail missed it last time. Can you say that?
Okay.
Because I cannot believe this is being accepted by society.
Wait, what?
So
What?
I was looking for funding. Of course, we lost funding in my organization. And
Okay.
my board of directors sent me something that he had just last week. He went to a grant writing training for another organization he serves on. And he says, you'll be really interested to know that the federal government or the current administration has restricted use of probably about 100 words, he said. And if anybody uses these words,
Mm.
then they'll automatically get rejected, you know.
Mm.
And so, anyways, there's a bunch of quote unquote woke words. If you look up New York Times and restricted, words, Trump administration, whatever, then
Oh God.
things like advocacy, marginalized,
Oh.
things like minority,
Oh.
Latinx is on there. Just like LGBTQ plus, just yeah, and woman is on there, female is
Oh.
on there. Yeah.
Oh.
So
Oh, Lordy, that's half the population right there. A little over half right there. Yeah.
yeah, but you know what is not on there is white
Men.
and male or men. That is not on there. So we're
Surprise,
free to use it
surprise.
as
Good grief. Good grief. I mean,
yeah,
like, oh, that's so horrible. That's
it
just
is. It's awful. I think
It's terrible.
black people, I don't know. It's crazy. That if that doesn't just, I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're going to go
It's
into
like
war.
it feels like a nail in the coffin at this point,
Yeah. Yeah. And yet,
Uh,
you know, I'm not going to even go
but
there. I don't want to ruin my day.
no, no, I know. We feel like this every day, though. Like everybody's feeling this way who has a pulse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I know. So, anyways, I'm stuck between YOLO and and giving a shit.
Right. I know. It's just hard, because when you brought up war, and Sam has talked about maybe going back to Taiwan, and I know that China might invade Taiwan and that sort of stuff. It obviously predominantly men fight the wars, but what happens to women during war is unspeakable,
Yeah.
you know. And I mean, everybody's so like, okay, maybe we just need to fight, maybe we just need to attack and invade or do this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's great when you're standing behind a gun, but if you're a female and taken by surprise, then things aren't going to go well. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So kind of kind of weird that, like you said, they put women on the list. Jesus,
Yeah.
my God,
Yeah.
like
Gail,
what? Yeah, go ahead.
you want to go through your reactions of what happened in Gaza?
Oh, Jesus. I think you mean what I was alluding to that started this
Yes,
new conflict.
yes.
Oh, early on when, okay, you really want me to? Okay, all right, all right. Early on before Israel invaded Gaza this time, on October 5th, I think, Hamas attacked. Um, they were told to rape as many women as possible, evidently. The reports were that they would find women with nails and other objects, their dead bodies, inserted in areas they shouldn't be. I personally saw footage of, there was one woman that they had basically raped to death, and she was in the back of a truck. They had, her genitals blurred out, but her legs were splayed and she was naked. And there was about like 4 or 5 guys with, like AR-15s sitting around her, slapping her butt as they drove away. I mean, it's really bad. So that's what started this whole thing. So I don't know. I don't want to go into the whole political shit, but you wanted me to give that tidbit, Sam? There it is.
You were making a
That's what
point
I
about
saw.
how guys with guns can
Yeah.
talk about the honor of war, dying with dignity, fighting for the country,
Mm,
all that shit.
right.
And yet the women and children suffer in ways that don't even get discussed.
Exactly. Thank you. You said that better than I can. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Thank you. Yeah. I
I
know.
mean,
It's an ugly topic. But sorry guys.
well, ugliness is what we're trying to eradicate, and we can't eradicate it if we don't acknowledge it.
And what really worries me is, when this country is going the way it's going, people don't people in this country don't know what happens during war. I mean, in China, I forget which war it was. I think it was right before World War II. The Japanese invaded. They were throwing babies up in the air and impaling them on bayonets and stuff. I mean, like they would rape the women with the bayonets. So my point of saying this is like we really don't want to go there. We don't want war. War is not the answer. You know what I mean? Does it does that
Yep.
resonate with anybody?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because like for real, I mean, it feels like it's kind of inevitable though, with the way things are
Mm,
going. And I kind of feel powerless to do anything about it. But I know what's coming if it does happen. It's not clean. War is not clean.
you know, I always
And
worry
what do you
too
do?
about, you know, I always worry about my kids.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I do not have children, particularly young children. I would
Hmm.
be absolutely terrified if I did right now, Kayla. I mean,
Yeah.
raising them, mm, that's got to be really hard. Oh, yeah, that's a whole nother. Jeez, I'm sorry. Well, I was a downer on this call, wasn't I?
Yeah, you were. Just kidding.
Sorry. Sam forced me to do this. I was like, I'm
I
so
didn't force
tired.
you to
I
do
worked late
this.
last night. Do I really have to? He's like, yes, I'm really trying to make a point about women's rights. And I was like, okay, that's the one subject I will get behind.
Then I was honestly, I was kidding big time. But I
I know.
appreciate you and Stacy. Stacy has her hand up. I was just about
Yeah,
to talk to you.
Stacy.
Go for it.
Go ahead. No, Kayla, finish your thought.
Yeah, I was going to say you have something fantastic to read to us. And I'm looking forward to it, but you have your hand up for another reason.
No, that actually ties in nice. Thank you, Kayla. Because Gail wasn't on the call in the beginning when I
Mhm.
had remarked how angry the whole thing had made me become, but that made me turn inward. And, as you were on the call, I was thinking about, the interesting thing to me is that for me, I didn't focus on the not feeling safe. I moved
Mm,
to the next step for me, which is when I don't assert myself or something I want. And that
mm,
comes from a place of feeling less valued in this society. But
mm,
that reminded me of something that I had written, which I put in the chat. It was a Medium article. I got to go back and figure out how to put a title to it because I wrote it a while ago during the
mm,
Kavanaugh hearings. So I put that in. You could read it at another time. But
mm,
I wrote about an instance that I was not safe as a
mm,
13, 14-year-old girl. And it
mm,
just struck me because here I am now thinking, well, I do feel safe. I mean, that is not to, I
mm,
know most women don't. So let me just,
No, no.
I'm not minimizing anybody else's experience,
Mm,
but
mm,
I was thinking, gee, that's funny, I do. And then it made
mm,
me think maybe I've just blocked it out because here I have an experience
mm,
that I wrote about when I was 13 or 14. So
mm,
have I just blocked that out or did I process it or I don't know. But more
mm,
important to me
mm,
is what I actually wanted to share on this call
mm,
because I believe that part of the solution might be we may, as a society, have to focus on the little boy. Even though I hate
yeah.
always starting with men first, I think it's
Mm,
necessary to start with the little boy. And what I
mm,
wanted to share with this group, and I'll put it in the in the chat again because you weren't here, so you wouldn't have it,
mm,
was this was an exercise that I created. So I create them for myself. They're theatrical in nature, and they try to use, pictures and music and everything else. But the idea is a process that helps people to process their emotions the way they would if they were watching a movie or if they were creating it. And
mm,
everything that happened in those conversations somehow spurred me to go back to this piece because I had totally forgotten about it. It's there, it's in my closet. But so that's what I wanted to share. So I'm going to read it to you. Um, if you can click on it, though, there are pictures there, which is really, for me, it's part of the experience. And I would like responses on this as a possible workshop kind of thing. So this is an idea that I wanted to bring forward as my work that I would like your opinion on, but haven't felt comfortable or worthy enough for. I don't know what the word would be, but I haven't asserted myself to share it before. So this is the way I organize in Google Docs because I'm not good with technology and I have a very, well, anyway. So this is from the how from the How Do You Mend a Broken Heart collection, and it's called Cry
Mm.
Like an MF. And I use a lot of initials because I play with words a lot. From the time I was a little girl, the only dream I ever had involved being a mother. It remained at the heart of all others that would come. There was nothing in the world that meant more to me, and while I was blessed 3 times to have given birth to healthy children, I'd be lying to say that things played out the way I had imagined. I've raised 3 different types of boys, one smart and sensitive, one in the body of a girl, and one from a different father than the older two, angry and with a heart that came in cracked. It's this one that reminds me of the country we live in today, plagued by a toxic energy, dominated by a broken male archetype. Both find themselves dependent upon and powerless to change. In fact, it is often not even a consideration until one hits the bottom and the discomfort is too much to bear. Until then, there is an illusory comfort in their perceived stability and security. It's more clear to me now why misery loves company. We all crave community, and we all want to have a place we call home. Many of us believe that home is where the heart is, so let's stay with that metaphor for a moment. Where is your heart, and where are you drawn? Who do you find yourself surrounded by? What energy do you bring into your home? What do you share with your figurative neighbors? Now, to be clear, this is not to say that men are solely responsible for the damaging environment most find ourselves a part of today. All humans carry both masculine and feminine energy, and toxic male energy finds its counterpart in the toxic feminine. What is clear, though, is that we are being poisoned and that people, structures, and paradigms are exploding. How we will collectively deal with the damage still remains to be seen. We are at the moment in time where we are being called upon to make our choices. I don't know what all of the answers are, but I do know one thing for certain. Only love is powerful enough to help us heal. Of that, I am sure. There is no other cure. And I just put to be continued, but if you go down, because this was part of my healing journey, that I would, maybe be sharing with others in the group or whatever memories came out. For me, the healing was in the making of this. But that's a picture of me with my firstborn that I really love. The next picture on the left is me with my Aries, Leah. And on the right is Corey. He's my youngest from the second marriage, and he's also in the picture with the cake. We were very close before my divorce. And my oldest son, Ryan, the kind, sensitive one, is to my left in the bottom picture. The next picture is Corey when he was having a difficult time, and he had come home from school, which he had a lot of trouble with, but they had had him working in the greenhouse, which was really, really healing for him. I want to just state that when I talk about like the cracked heart and the broken heart, Corey had a lot of sensitivity within him, but he lived in a family where there was constant yelling and bullying, and we were a blended family. The next picture is that's Corey with his mouth open. He had it pretty easy compared to, he was the spoiled one. The other two are my children from a first marriage. And Leah on the right, that's when she was going through her very angry rebel stage, which was really hard on me as a mother. We're happy to say we are very close now. The next picture is me with Marley on my bed, because my bed is where I always did my writing, which was part of my healing process to get out of the marriage. The bottom is me with my 2 younger kids who, I mean, people would stop me and just tell me what beautiful souls they were, and they really are. The next one are some pictures that I have scattered out on the rug when I was actually starting this process. And I used those pictures to help me release a lot of the emotions that had been locked up. And the bottom, like I said, this is my work in progress. So these are like my personal files. I have the songs that would be related to any kind of production that I would put together. Um, and let's see what else. And I started with Corey's song because I recognized that the most the most painful place for me lies with him. He's at the core of my heart. He's where I want to help, where I want to help heal the world. Like to me, it's like that's why he's in my life. And you can just scroll through the rest of the pictures. That's him with his dad right before we got divorced. The other pictures, him when he was involved in Temple with the Purim play, and you can just scroll them yourself. And I do want to share that if you look and you see the picture of me with my ex and Corey, that is after our divorce, when we first decided that we would have a happy extended family. And unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, which really caused my son to go downhill. Um, the what you see, that ad is something I pulled off of his page, which, fuck love. I think that's exactly how he feels inside, which breaks my heart. Again, another collage of pictures that I put them together because it enables me to tell a story should I want to do that. And again, the purpose of sharing these stories out loud are for people to be able to, people that may not always be able to connect with their own emotions, to help enable them to do so so that they can release those feelings and heal. And then that's where it says the other ones, that's just, my outline for where I go next. And, I started with Marley because he was the one that I lost 2 years ago. And that was part of my grieving process. Okay, that's enough for now. Thank you.
Since I'm not here that often, let me just say that it was the simplest words. He said, I wanted to be a mother, something to that effect, right?
Yes, more than anything.
More than anything.
And a good one.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
No, I mean, I
I
tried
just,
really, really
yeah,
hard.
no, I understand. But I'm just saying, like, those words are just so beautiful. Seriously. Like, I love hearing that. It's just not, I wish there was more respect for that in this world because it's so important. I miss my mom endlessly. And there's nothing like having a mother who wanted you, you know?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Stacy. I often tell people that, um, well, just to give you a background, my first was unplanned, and then the second one was like grudgingly planned. But I'm glad I have both of them because I love them, and being a mom has really made me into a better person. I don't, with the way my life was going, I think I would have been fine, but I just love how it is now, even with its challenges and being like super duper tired, um,
Mm,
and broke. That
mm.
our kids make us into to better people, and I want to be a better person because of them. And Stacy, I feel like, especially with that story, you're the same way.
Your kids are really cool, Kayla, from what I recall.
Oh, sorry,
They
sorry.
are.
I forgot I was muted because my phone had rang. I just wanted to
Oh.
say thank you for letting me share it with you because
Mm,
that's really the healing piece for me. And,
mm.
That feels really good. And I feel really supported.
I want to thank you for sharing that, Stacy. It was important for me to hear all that because my picture of you in my mind is now much richer as a result of that sharing. And I know it makes you feel vulnerable to share very intimate for all of us. Yeah, anything like that. But it's a healing process. And the more that people can heal their past and look forward and find meaning and purpose going forward, that's what matters. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I also just say that it was very eloquently written? I just thought it.
Thank you. So that being said, getting back to the original topic, when I read this, what I recognized with young boys is that we might have to start, and this is what I said early on when I was saying I'm always standing up for women. It made me think about how certain mothers do not put boundaries on their young
Mm-hmm.
boys,
Mm-hmm.
and how that leads to them becoming entitled and this whole way of thinking. And I will say for the record, I was not one of those mothers, but I was also not my youngest son's only influence.
There's so many influences in this world. Parenting has just only gotten harder. Yeah, in my opinion, I can imagine.
I think about, I'm sorry, Sam, go ahead.
No, finish, please.
I was just going to say, I think a lot about my ex-husband's mother because to me, she's the toxic mother. And she's the one that, and again, I could take the other side and try to figure out how she got that way and society, made her become toxic, but that's not my interest. My interest is how she enabled my ex, who, while I will say I'll always love him because I'll always see that little boy, he has become a horrible human being.
Yeah.
And it started in childhood because there were clearly wonderful things about him. There's reasons I fell in love with him. There's a softness that was there. But when you have a mother that makes you think that you are the only one that's important, that you are more important than everyone else, that everyone else is wrong and not deserving, and you start believing it, and then maybe you get a little power where you control finances, whether it be for people that work for you or for people that are supporting you or your children and you move it, and I have to say, he also had a toxic father who was a big bully, who criticized him at every step, who, according to my ex-sister-in-law, was verbally abusive to him. Now, he can't recognize that abuse, but I happen to believe his sister because it makes sense. And then so when I share my vulnerability, I also recognize that it takes a lot of courage on my part to do so. And I acknowledge myself for having that courage. And I also know that not everybody has it or wants to have it, and that's fine. But I think we need to make that clear that people that don't want to go inside of their own pain, it's because they're not, I would like to, shift the paradigm a little and show how that's the actual weakness. The vulnerability and the willingness and ability to be vulnerable is actually the strength and not the other way around. And I'm complete, Sam, so jump right in.
Thank you, Stacy. There's a topic you brought up, which I think is going to be another very rich but long thread we potentially could decide to pursue. And that is how we raise little boys.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Now, I have my own
100%.
experience. Gail has her own experience. You have your own experience. I'm sure Kayla has her experience, and Barry and Eric and everybody else who's watching this potentially have unique experiences. But every year, when I talk to someone new, I remember something else about my childhood, which I've been unconscious of this entire time,
Wow.
and then can finally see how it's affecting what I'm doing today. And Gail knows a lot about what I'm talking about. But
Mm-hmm.
in particular, and I'm not asking you to do this now, Gail, many of the
Mm-hmm.
stories that you've shared when you were like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
are really unique and really impactful stories.
Mm-hmm.
And your experience growing up, geez, do I dare say it? Yes, in a predominantly white
Mm-hmm.
society.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
For the record, Gail grew up in Sequim, Washington. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Picture postcard country. I mean, like stunning,
In
stunningly
the
beautiful,
80s, by the way. So, not,
but very remote, hard to
yes.
get to.
Yes.
So
Very
people with
white.
means,
Very,
people
very white.
with resources end up there to enjoy retirement or, Gail, you can tell the story better than I can. But it's like,
It, it's
families
predominantly, it
with
used to be
assets.
predominantly, sorry, it used to be predominantly a retirement community while I was growing up. But now that's changed drastically. Well, not recently, but in the last decade and a half, it's really changed. So go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
But you grew up in a predominantly white society, and yet you've
100%.
had many stories about how you were treated as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying, hey, you have to share them, but if you do at some point decide to share them, I think,
Mm-hmm.
they're very impactful.
Okay. I will consider that. You can tell me which ones you think are most impactful because there have a lot. All
Well, I'm referring
of
specifically
you,
to
though.
the case where you and your friends went to a teacher. Remember that one?
Oh, God. Okay, yeah. So if we want to stay in the vein of women's rights and just women existing in society at all, do you really want? Are you?
It's your choice. I'm not saying, I'm not saying you have to, but that story made a huge impact on me.
So the one with Danny Dykema is what you're talking about. In fourth grade, when my friends went with me to the teacher and said he's doing stuff to me. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody want to hear this? Because I won't do it if.
Yeah, I want to hear
Okay.
it.
Okie dokie. All right. Fourth grade comes around. I love school as a kid. At that time, I couldn't get out of the house fast enough to get to school because I just loved to learn stuff. Um, so I get to fourth grade. There's this kid who's obviously having some behavioral problems. He would pull his pants down in class and, hang his wiener out, and like nothing was really ever done about it. So for whatever reason, he got laser focused on me. And on the playground, he would corner me and, you know, do stuff. And then, so it was just getting to the point where it was intolerable for me. And my two best friends in class were witnessing all of this. So all three of us went to my teacher and said, you know, Danny's doing this to her, like help, right? Basically. Um, she just said, just ignore it. And
Oh
then
my God.
what was worse is after that, She rearranged the seating in the classroom and sat me right next to him. So then he would put his hands up my dress every day, the whole damn day. In music class, I would have to push him off of me because he would be crawling all over me. It just, and nobody did anything. I didn't even tell my parents because the fact that the teacher said, just ignore it, resonated with me. It reminded me of how my parents would tell me to deal with my brothers. Just ignore it, right? So this happened all year long. I used to have really long hair. I cut my hair off as short as I possibly could because I thought maybe he's targeting me because of my hair. Like I was trying to think of anything to make him stop. Nothing worked. So, anyways, that's my story of fourth grade. It was bad.
Wow.
I literally like molested, like like in class during class, but I was so focused on being a good student, I just tried to ignore it. But it sat with me for it. It still does. You know, that's
Yeah.
just one of many stories. But yeah, I still remember the guy's name, Danny Dykema. Sam found him online. I was like, oh my God, that is him. Holy shit, he is. Oh God, he's still alive. That sucks.
Yeah. Ew, there's that rapist right
Yeah,
there.
I know. He used to so I didn't really understand any terminology about sex, but I learned it from him because he kept telling me, I'm gonna hump you, I'm gonna hump you.
Ugh.
Yeah, all the time. That was all I ever heard from him. I want to hump you, I'm gonna hump you, I'm gonna hump you. And anytime he caught me alone or sort of alone, well, that was what he attempted to do. Fun. Fun time. Fourth
Mhm.
grade. Yeah. Yeah. But
I'm so sorry about that.
thanks. I gotta wonder though, like, where are the adults in this whole situation?
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
can't tell me that people didn't notice that this was going on. And the
Yep.
fact that she sat me right next to him. Okay, the teacher has to have been a psychopath of some sort. Because
Hmm.
she
Absolutely.
knew. She knew. We told her. And you're gonna have to take my word for it. I was not a troublemaker. I was very disciplined. I was a really good student. So I was not making any problems for her to make her want to like do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my fourth grade experience, Sam. There it is.
Thanks for sharing that story. It made an impact on me, and it still does. And
I'm glad. I
I'm
mean, I'm sorry. I'm not glad that it happened, but I'm glad that like sharing it like makes an impact on somebody. And I've worked really hard to get you to see what women and young girls go through, and you've accepted it. And thank fucking God because I needed somebody to hear it.
Hmm. Stacy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm sorry that happened to you, Gail, and thank you for sharing it.
Mhm.
Um, bef excuse me. Before you shared the story, though, I had my hand up because I wanted to say to Sam that
Oh,
when he was talking about how what we need to focus on, a possible conversation is how young boys are raised. I
right.
wanted to say that,
Can I just interrupt real quick? For
sure.
whatever reason on my screen, I can't see when people have their hand up. So I did not know. I apologize.
Oh, no, 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 no. I
I
didn't
can't see it.
say it
It's
to
just a
indicate
stationary
that I was
picture.
upset. I said
Oh,
it,
no, I'm
I
just letting
said
you
it
guys know that I can't tell if you have your hand up. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go
And
ahead.
I'm glad you brought it up because let me just say, I said that part because of the timing element
Mm,
involved.
got it.
So what I was going to say is that when we have certain conversations in the future, and
Mhm.
this is before those stories were attached to any person, which is the key part of why I mentioned the timing,
Mm,
that it might behoove us to not just look at what's happening to the victim, but
Mm.
what might be going on in the mind of that young male perpetrator.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Now,
Thank. Oh,
Now, I
yes.
don't want to do it when somebody's shared their story because that's not the time. Like when Kayla was sharing her story, that wasn't the time to bring in something else. That was the time to be totally with the person who was victimized to let them express and not to say, yeah, but, it's like, so that's why I mentioned the timing of
Understand.
my hand going up. That being
Mhm.
that being said, I probably agree with you what you said about the teacher. So I don't even want to go into why she did what she did because she could have
Yeah.
been a psychopath. Who knows? But
Mm.
what I do want to say is that she failed both of you.
Yep.
Yes. And believe me, even at that time, I knew something must be going wrong in his household, Danny's household.
Right.
I just kind of intrinsically just knew it instinctively. And then over the years, I mean, I've always had that question: what on earth happened to this child to create that? I mean,
Right.
he was a monster. He terrorized me the entire year. I was terrified to go to school at that point. And I'd been a kid that loved going to school, loved, wearing dresses and stuff like that. I stopped wearing dresses because I didn't want him to put his hands up my, you know. Um, and my mom noticed a change and she never knew what it was. But like I said, I didn't say anything because the teacher told me to ignore it. I'm a very little kid, like 8 years old, and when my brothers would harass me, my parents would just tell me to ignore it. So I just thought, okay, this is just something I got to deal with. Um, but yes, the what happened to this kid? Why did he become like this? This is exactly what we need to be asking. Thank you.
The other thing that I'll say is the other story that I shared in the chat that I didn't read, I also didn't tell my parents because I was embarrassed. But I did tell the boy's mother, who told me that I must have done something to deserve it.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Ah,
Yep. Yep.
I'm sorry. I get.
The other thing I want to say about myself, and this
Mm,
also speaks to the injustice and my anger, for me, I'm very focused on control. So
mm,
let me share that my dad was a very tough man, not with
mm,
me, not in my
mm,
family, not with the kids. My
mm.
dad was feared by people. He was a street kid, so I'm going to just say it like that.
Okay, I got
Um,
you.
but in my household, so it was my mom, my dad, who, by the way, my dad never graduated high school.
Mhm,
Everybody loved him.
mhm,
So, like my dad was a character. Everybody loved him. But
mhm,
I did learn later, and I do understand that there were times in his life where he was very tough and hard. But I know that's
mhm,
not the real him, which I'll share in writing at another time. That being said,
mhm,
what I do want to say is that in my family, my mom, my dad, me, and my sister, I could say anything I want. If my father said, if I heard my parents and they were having a disagreement, I could jump right in. Daddy, mom's right. No, you're wrong because of this. I mean, and we went head to toe. We fought all the time because I'm an outspoken person. So that experience of feeling safe to do that has also shaped me.
mm.
I didn't get that on the outside, but I am so grateful that I got that on the inside.
Me too. I'm glad you had that.
Yeah. That being said, I feel um I feel like this is like my mission. I feel like I understand like the broken little boy in somebody.
Right. Right.
And luckily, like in my dad's case, he had wonderful people, so his
Mm,
heart never totally closed up. I
mm,
want to say two quick things about my two quick instances, memories I have with my dad, just because I wanted to counter what I just said about him being a really tough guy. Okay. two quick things. Well, I recently found out, actually. So my dad, oh God, this is hard to say. My dad dealt with a lot of gamblers and money
Mm.
borrowing and things like that.
Mm.
And he had shared with my mother once how a whole gang of them went to go after this guy that hadn't paid his debt. And he explained to my mother, I had to knock the guy out in one punch because I knew if I didn't, they would kill him. So he was still doing the best he could under those circumstances to try and help that person. Another example is he was driving me into the city because I went to drama school and we had moved upstate and we were late and there was a car pulled over on the side of the road. And so he slowed down, he looked, and then he kept driving and he said, "Oh, thank God they weren't black." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because we would have had to help to stop them because nobody else would have." So my dad was a really kind, good, loving man. And that came across to anybody that knew him. But I also know that there was a dark side that could be looked at in a different way. So I wanted to illustrate that there's a lot inside of all of us,
Mhm.
and it doesn't always look the same at any given time. And I think it would behoove us that anytime we're speaking to a person, we kind of try and remember that. And that's not to say that we don't decide, oh, this person is not for me because what they've
Mhm.
done with their combination of stuff is not the energy that I want to be in. But I just wanted to say all that, so thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. I can say that I too, throughout my life, have known people that were kind of on both sides of the law, I guess you could say. And you're absolutely right. A lot of these people are very kind-hearted. You know, it's it's erroneous for us to think that, just because you get a conviction of this, that, or the other thing, we shouldn't just write people off like that. You know, um, but yeah, I had a similar. I had a not a my it wasn't my actual father, but I had kind of a surrogate dad that was involved in some stuff. So he ended up going to prison for 14 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't anything violent. He didn't do anything violent, but it was a lot of uh just uh, substances being distributed.
Yeah. My dad was probably the most brilliant man I knew. And I mean, he
Mm.
was the best problem solver. He taught me that nothing is impossible. And luckily his tough guy days were before he got married. So that he was younger. But what I know for sure is had he been born into a different situation, I mean, my grandparents were wonderful people,
Mm.
but I know for sure he probably would have been a doctor or a pianist. Um,
Mm.
he just was so I mean, as an adult, they had bought me a piano that I had, and I walked in on him, and I was already, I was an adult with children, and he was playing
Mm.
this beautiful piece, and I was like, "Daddy, where did you learn that?" I always called him Daddy till the end. I was like, "Daddy, where did you learn this?" And he was like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Where did you learn to play that?" And he was like, "I just made it up." And I was like, he didn't even realize like the brilliance behind that.
Man, it's impressive.
He also had more integrity than anyone I've ever met. I mean, once a lady showed up at my house and my stomach went into my heart because I grew up, keeping secrets, obviously.
Hmm.
And I opened the door and I thought, oh shit, something happened wrong. And because she wanted to see my father. But she
Hmm.
wanted to see my father because she had left an enormous amount of money on the
Hmm.
counter at the bank. And my father had called all the tellers around because he was street smart enough to know that we need transparency and that, not to trust anybody. And he turned the money in and they were able to locate her. So she was just coming over to thank him. But that's the kind of guy he was. He did his best to do what was right to the best of his ability under the circumstances. And I think that is something praiseworthy.
I agree. I think it's important to know that people that kind of just operate outside the bounds of what people would consider ethical or legal or whatever. Some of them are just amazing, good people. Some of the best people you would ever want to know.
And the joke of it is gambling shouldn't isn't even illegal anymore.
Right.
Like that's it's crazy.
Just like a lot of places, pot isn't illegal. Yet in some
Yeah,
states, there are still people that are serving a life sentence for having a pound or
exactly.
two of pot. It's like, geez. Like, yeah. Your dad sounds like an amazing person, Stacy.
He passed.
I, I'm sorry.
Or I wouldn't be saying this.
Secrets have to die with you, yeah?
You guys,
Mm.
I'm aware that it's after the top of the hour, but we haven't heard from Barry or Eric or Kayla in a while. And then I have two thoughts, but I'm also quite willing to let this thing go for as long as you guys want. But I just want to note that the time is now after two.
I'll shut up.
The thought that came to mind with Gail's story around 1980, a New York Times writer named Daniel Goleman published a book called Emotional Intelligence. And his point was of all the kinds of intelligence that people can manifest, language intelligence, mathematical intelligence, body kinesthetic intelligence, etc., the one that was not part of the curriculum was emotional intelligence, which is a learnable, teachable skill, and it was absolutely absent from the public school curriculum. Some children may have learned it at home if they were lucky, but most people didn't learn it. And I think what happened to Gail is a demonstration of what happens in a culture in which emotional intelligence is totally absent from the curriculum. The children don't learn it. The adults hadn't learned it in their time. The grandparents hadn't learned it. And I think the kinds of stories that Gail tells are exemplary of what happens in a culture which doesn't teach emotional intelligence.
I agree. Thank you. I agree.
I
It's
want
also a, oh no, go Eric.
I want to acknowledge the balance of energy in this conversation, which I haven't seen in a long time on Zoom, with three male, three female interacting this way, which enabled a certain level of trust. And very important things were said. And I could see echoes of it in the news where um, principals are getting arrested for things they did as teachers with students. It's crazy now. And what I remember, um, there was a psychologist, John Bradshaw, who did a lot of research on the inner child as a model of influences on behavior, and if that child could be healed through therapies and certain things. That was probably around the around the 90s when this was popular, but it did have a lot of influence on psychologists going forward. So, um, yeah, I don't have answers, and I really feel the pain that was expressed in these stories. I acknowledge that, and hopefully, I take what I can learn going forward just to be aware of these issues and the people I deal with, and to treat people with respect. I mean, but it really is a lot of trust that you showed here, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Kayla, were you about to say something?
Oh yeah. Um, sorry, I forgot what I was going to say, but and I remember now, I think. Yes. Like it's we're getting out of it, yeah, but we really have to really just mindfully start moving away as a society from the toxic patriarchy,
You're
where
here.
you know, and especially the boys will be boys narrative, which,
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
that narrative unfortunately is geared towards overlooking a lot of violence, and pointing out that it's always been this way. And that just shows lack of evolution, on everyone's part. And so to that, what you were saying, Stacy, as a mom, especially a mom with two types of boys, one who is very masculine, a man's man or a teen's man, because he's only 17. And then there's my Max, who is LGBTQ. So um, I don't stand for that narrative whatsoever. I always voice it with my kids. And I always try to give them opportunities to see a positive male energy. And then also to see the natural, like for instance, mahus. In Polynesia, you have a lot of people who they're not a gender, and it's okay. Our culture actually, the Polynesian culture actually, embraces that as some sort of enigma instead of outcasting and putting it on some fucking government list that you can't call them a certain thing anymore. Um, and I really, both of you sharing your stories, you know, sorry. I was telling Sam last week that things are bubbling up in my, I won't go into it too much, but things are bubbling up in my memory that I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I was sexually assaulted when I was like 8 or 9. I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
I really
Mm-hmm.
did,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a neighborhood kid, not once, but twice, in the back of my own home or on the side of my own home,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really uncomfortable. And my own uncle. And the sad part is, for the former, I felt weird and ashamed. I didn't know anything about sex either, but I don't want to say anything. And then the latter, I didn't want to say anything because he was my uncle. But when I did say something later, the two people who were actually present either wiped their memory of it, not that they invalidated me, but they didn't remember.
Yeah, they did.
Like, how could you guys not remember? It was so obvious. So,
Validating you, Kayla. Come on. Like it is though.
like, it's so strange,
It
and
is.
again, it just like it oppresses and a
Yes.
woman's whole
It
being and their
suppresses.
voice and their safety.
Yep.
Like, it sucks. It really
Yeah.
does. And
It
and
first.
then you grow up going, oh yeah, that's how it is. And
Yep.
that's not cool. That needs to change.
It really does. It really fucking does. I'm so glad you brought this subject up last Saturday because I've just been dying to you know, speak my mind about it. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting Doug and Joanna's article that they wrote in the chat, and it combines the heart of a woman and the mind of a man, and I really recommend it. It's just a great starting point to be able to
Mm.
continue these conversations.
Mm. And we should do another one called the Heart of a Man, Mind of a Woman.
Mm-hmm.
No, I do want to look into that. Do you have a link for it?
I put it in the
It's in the
chat.
chat.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm not used to this, so okay. But Kayla, you said, sorry to go back. If you don't want to talk about it, I understand. But what happened with your neighbor? You remembered something. I had a similar realization this last week after listening to your interaction on Saturday. And I remembered that I was sexually assaulted in college, in a very safe place, my own apartment, and by a guy that shouldn't I should not have needed to be, you know, um, careful of. Um, but it happened, and I can't believe I tuned that out. Like, Sam,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever told you this, and and I try to tell Sam about a lot of this stuff because I feel like my mission is kind of like, at least if I have one man around me, I can hopefully educate him about this shit. So I do try to share it. But I was just astounded. I was like, how the hell did I forget this? This is
Mm-hmm.
insane. And so, I mean, do you want to go into more details about what happened, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was really simple. He was a neighborhood kid, that
Mhm,
came around. We all played together. And then one day I
mhm,
was just kind of out and playing by myself. But my mom worked nights and she took care of me. And then my dad worked during the day and he took care of us at night.
mhm,
But I loved playing outside all the time. I was always outside in the front yard.
mhm,
And
mhm,
one day he took me to the side of my house and said some strange things to me, got a little close, I remember, and then stuck his fingers where they shouldn't be stuck.
oh,
So I
see.
had no idea what that was. And I remember it was really painful and uncomfortable. And I knew as much to not say anything to my parents. And then he was back the next day to do it too. And then, I was like, yeah, this is not happening every day, and
Mhm,
so I didn't go outside that day because, or I remember
mhm,
not going outside for a period of time and going outside again, and thankfully he was around. And every time I saw him, I just kind of ran away, ran
yeah,
inside my house.
yeah, totally
So,
understand that. Yeah,
but it was one of those things where like, oh yeah, that's right, and that just
yeah.
shows like all of these crazy occurrences that
There's
my
so
sister
many.
even, she was just like, I
Mhm,
remember when I went to a bar with you and some guy just totally grabbed you and you
mhm.
swatted his hand away. And I was like, oh, you do? I was like, because I don't remember that. You know why? Because that fucking happens all the time.
That
All the
exactly, it just becomes normal.
time.
It's like only
And it's
like
not
the most
cool.
it's like only the most egregious things do we remember, and the rest just kind of just is like, that's life, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm
I
sorry for the
remember.
men in the room, you guys don't get that. You don't understand what that's like. And if you see other guys doing it, please stand up and say something. It's not cool. It's not cool. Just saying. Not good. I'm so sorry, Kayla. That's yeah. How old were you?
Oh gosh, I was not even like a teenager. I remember I was looking at an
Yeah.
old picture of myself in the Philippines, and I remember I was thinking either 9 or 11. I don't remember, but
Okay.
I was like, oh yeah, that's around that time where that. I remember his name too. His name was Robert.
Yeah, geez.
I had a
Yeah.
Robert abuser too.
Oh.
Anybody named Robert who's gonna come to our sessions? Ooh.
I've been groped by Robert as well. Let's join the club. No, seriously though, I'm not joking. I was just groped though. Like, I don't, like, how weird is that I say just groped? Like, that's
Yeah. Yep.
like that's passable, or that's just something to just brush off. Like, I was just groped
Yeah.
by this guy. No big deal. Thank God I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
raped or totally molested or,
Right.
like whatever. Yeah, like I was just groped. Yeah, you just grabbed all this and that and the other thing and whatever.
Right.
Just another day. Like, geez, I wonder why women don't feel safe in this world. And the fact that men are so silent about this is scary to me. I
Yeah.
don't think we're going to. My theory is we're not going to evolve until men start talking about this stuff and start getting serious about it. Women have been, we're trying. I mean, but it just doesn't seem like it's enough because we're not the ones doing it, right? Like, okay, you have an addict, for instance. They can't change just because you want them to. They have to want to change.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Eric was saying something about that last Sunday.
Mm-hmm. And please, for the guys in this call, I'm not saying you guys do this kind of stuff, but I bet you know people who do, whether you realize it or not. Just try to be more aware. That's all I would ask. I don't know. Just maybe try to stop it. Make this more of an, I don't know. There's so many issues in this world. It feels like, and women are always told to just kind of like be heard and not be seen and not heard. So like any quote unquote woman's issue just always seems to be on the back burner, right? So you've got racism, you've got gender inequality, um, like as far as LGBTQ and stuff like that. But then it's always the women's issues that seems to be pushed the furthest back. Is it just me, or am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
Yeah. So I'm just
No.
wondering why, because it's over half the world's population. Why are our issues and the inequality we experience and the dangers? It's not just inequality, it's literally danger. It's literally violence. Why is that always pushed to the back? I don't get it. I can't answer that question. I wish I could.
I don't have an answer, but I was reminded of a movie I saw about children in Africa dealing
Mm.
with male dominant
Oh,
figures and rape. And
yes,
it is really bad around the world.
it's
And
terrible.
yeah, so let's acknowledge that. And I'm sure there
100%.
are places where kids are being raised better, but
Mm-hmm.
the yeah, I mean, for things to diffuse into population, it takes I don't know what it takes. It's just the epiphany has to happen, and the
Oh,
enlightenment has to come through somehow. Um, and
mm-hmm.
a lot of it is a lot of personal problems have to happen, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer. I wish I did.
Stacy, actually, I kind of think has part of the answer, or if not all the answer. It, the young boys, you got to start there. They're going to grow up into the men that do these things. At 8 years old, like I said, there was another 8 year old doing this to me already. So it has to start at a very young age. Because if it's okay to do it when you're 8 years old, like imagine the other boys in class that noticed this kid doing this to me, right? Which they did. They had to. It was obvious. I would push them off me constantly. Um, so they're seeing that this behavior, they might not think it's okay, but it's nothing for them to do anything about, right? That's a problem. I mean, if all the young boys in the class had stood up and been like, this is wrong, maybe something would have been done finally. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not trying to, but no, I think you had a great point that it starts with young boys. It has to. They grow up into men, they assume the mantle of power, and we have to deal with those repercussions. as we are right now with our current president. So if that's not a good illustration, I don't know what is. The guy who's like, just grab him by the pussy. I mean, I don't even. Words start to fail me. Sorry, guys. Anyway.
So I want to share something because it touches on a number of different points that have been brought up. The article, the Medium article that I had put in the chat was where I retold where I had been groped. And the reason that I brought it up at the time had to do with the Kavanaugh trial, with the Kavanaugh hearings, and
Mm,
how Christine Ford was being targeted. So that was my motivation for speaking up. I was speaking
mm,
up in defense of her.
mm,
Interestingly enough, the perpetrator was also a Robert. But what I talk about in the piece that I wrote is well, two things. One, which I shared earlier, is that I didn't go to my parents out of shame. The sexuality part of it
yeah.
and the shame attached to that with me, my own personal growing up, kept me from telling them because they absolutely would have defended me. In fact, there
Mm,
was another situation where a boy, I don't know, 15, he smacked me on my face because I was trying to light a cigarette, and he said that I wasn't allowed to smoke. And that time, I did tell my parents. I didn't think, and I was calling them because I was upstate. They were at home. So I was calling them to tell them about it. And as my father always did, he always minimized everything, like no big deal, which made me feel unprotected. But that wasn't
mm,
the case. I later, weeks later, got this very strange apologetic call from this boy, which I really couldn't figure out until I realized at some point it was kind of made apparent to me that my father had shown his other side to this boy. This boy really liked my father. They all knew my dad. You know, we used to go away for the
yeah.
summer. So, okay, but back to my original point. In the story, what I
Mm,
talk about is that the scar wasn't so much about being groped, but about the betrayal that I felt from the other people who were there that witnessed it.
mm,
And those were girls and boys. Now,
mm-hmm.
I originally shared this. I didn't write this as a Medium article. This started out on a Facebook post with people we had known. And to the point that nobody believed it, why would, like, not that nobody believed it, I'm sorry, that nobody remembered it. Why would they remember it? It wasn't particularly significant to them. However, all of the people and the ones that spoke up, and I did, and we were already at odds politically, but and that's why we were like in that space in the first place. Remember, this was around the Kavanaugh hearings.
Mm-hmm.
They all spoke up to say they believed me, either because they knew me, because remember, we had all grown up together, or some of them started sharing their experiences with this same person. And some of them were boys that had this experience with that person. And some of them privately contacted me. Why didn't this one say anything? I had boy cousins that didn't stick up for me. I had people that
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm so sorry I did that. Like they couldn't even believe that they didn't do something at the time and they didn't remember it. There were a lot of dynamics there. And the last thing I'll say is years later, we come to find out that the whole time he was struggling with his sexuality and he's a gay man now. So there's just so many things that played into it, going back to how he must have felt that how suppressed look, I don't like to spend too much time going into somebody who victimized me. That
Yeah.
being said, I am very aware or I believe very strongly, that had he been more comfortable in who he was, which
Mm,
was being impacted by the people around him, regardless of what they were reacting to, he may not have had such aggressive tendencies. And I think it's those aggressive tendencies that we need to look at as a whole
mm.
because they do pertain to females as well.
Yep.
And so I think that one of the ways we need to go about solving this is not making it necessarily a male female problem,
Mm,
but and again, this is why I put the article about energy with Doug and Joanna, because we all have those energies within us. So if we look at it as we're trying to heal the whole system, and that whole system is made up of smaller systems, each of those smaller systems being, let's say, the human being in this case, we might be able to come to better solutions where we're not looking to direct blame, we're just looking to fix the system. Over. Sam?
Like Eric said, I don't have a solution. I don't think it's time that we actually go into solution. I think a lot of this is awareness. So I really appreciate each of you telling these stories. And that's what I think didn't happen last Saturday.
yep.
So until we get some acknowledgement and awareness and a sense of how widespread this stuff is, people don't even have an appreciation for the magnitude of the problem and the impacts it's having on society. And I think these conversations are a small but positive step, I think, towards some of that awareness. And again, I have to reflect. We would not have been able to have this kind of a conversation 8 years ago. We've had to get to know each other in such deep and ways and over such a long time and had some disagreements and know how each other, responds to misunderstandings and disagreements before we could even address such a difficult topic as this, is what's going through my mind. So I personally appreciate the fact that, each of you is here and has been here for so long that we can actually trust each other enough to have these kinds of conversations, potentially very, very triggering. And I'm hoping this is the start of a thread of conversations around this topic. Certainly should not be the only one, but I do understand it's difficult. Over. Stacy?
Mm,
Yeah,
Oh,
I just want to say that there's something else to be learned in the way Josh reacted. To me, it's clear that he has some underlying issue related to what being a white man is that he's not willing to fully look at and address. And
mhm.
two things I want to take from that. One is, so when you say we and you talk about we in this group, I agree. However, some of the we have been able to have these conversations for a long time, like me, for example. I wouldn't have it with someone in a state similar to what Josh expressed, because
Mm.
he's not healed in that area, which is why, in general, I made the suggestion that we approach this issue from a place of a systems problem as opposed to inherent in any certain individuals. Because then we could avoid that emotional triggering in a way that maybe can be helpful. Because for some people, it's too hard to get past their own internalized blame. So, to make it clear, if that part's not clear, when some people don't want their children learning about slavery because they don't want their children to feel badly about themselves,
Mhm.
there's no legitimate reason or necessary reason why they would have to
Mhm.
feel badly about themselves.
Right, right.
They didn't do it. So there's something in that, just, and
That's
again,
a, mm,
my approach to healing is all things at once. So I want to recognize that I want the healing to go outward in different directions at the same time, as opposed to our typical way of going to one extreme and flipping to the other extreme. I would rather start in the center and see it moving out that way. And hopefully people move into where they are. I hope that makes sense. That's really the best way I can describe it.
it does.
That makes sense.
Gail, you want
Kind
to say
of,
something? I have another comment as well, but did you
I
want
just
to
had
just?
a quick question. So when you have a loose cannon like Josh in a conversation, you guys, I think we can all agree that had he been in this conversation, the whole thing would have been derailed. And anyways, so these groups are kind of like a microcosm of what's going on in the world. Like it's kind of like Josh kind of is like Trump, he's just a loose cannon, just says things just to get a rise out of people. It's he's toying with people. He thinks it's fun. It's how he gets his rocks off. Whatever. I'm not saying he's a terrible person. I'm just saying that, in my opinion, that's why he comes to these groups, and it affects you know people speaking the way Stacy did just now, and Kayla and myself, because he's the reason why I just noped out after the first time I tried to come because of what he said to me. So how do you deal with that is what I'm asking.
Well, I'll answer that for me personally,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I have told Josh, maybe not in these exact words, I find him to be disingenuous. So
Yep.
I deal with it by being very direct and blunt with how
Yep.
I feel, and I would
Yep.
not engage elsewhere with him. I wouldn't. That doesn't
Me
mean that
neither.
if he's here, I will engage in the straightforward way that I just did.
Yep. But man, he's very, he's not stupid when it comes to what he wants to accomplish. So he's very crafty at derailing conversations and focusing it all on himself and becoming a victim and all that kind of stuff. It's just, I don't know. I mean, like I said in the beginning, it really bugged me. Kayla had an awesome question for the guys in the chat at that time, and he just the whole thing just unraveled. Is there a way, Stacey, you think that can just be shut down without actually muting him?
I would rather, just like I said before, I'd rather focus on the system. So maybe I think the way I would approach it is there a better way we can ask that question that would
Mhm.
be more productive in a group with a group of individuals at different levels? So I might want to ask the men in the group, when was the first time that you witnessed this?
Mhm.
How did it make you feel? I suspect that, especially with the men that we're engaged with, because they tend to be more sensitive, kinder, loving, reflective people,
Mhm.
that might release some feelings in them and help them heal as well. Because I think, and I would say somebody like Barry would fit into this category, might have experienced a sense of helplessness at that point in his life, had he ever seen it. Over.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking, because I will say, as a woman, I sometimes feel like my opinion is not sought after.
Oh, girl, you're not the only one.
Mhm.
And that's especially troubling when I believe I have something worthwhile to offer.
It really is. And it feels like, and I know I'm looking at the guys because I can see the three guys on the screen. Um, it's interesting. So when us females got talking, it feels like the guys kind of got pushed out of it, but I feel like it's because we never get to have a voice usually, like you just said. It's very difficult to be heard. And so when we get an opportunity, we really want to take it. At the same time, I do want the feedback from the men in the group, and I want them to be thinking critically about the subjects we've been talking about. So just for you guys, I hope you are.
Yeah, I just want to say that I don't think that they were pushed at all. I think they chose to step back because
Ah,
they knew this was important and they're trying to give us an opportunity to really be clear because they do think, they know that we have something of value that needs to be brought into the open.
oh
So,
my gosh. Sorry. Oh my gosh, Stacey, you just pointed out something to me. Like I was just apologizing for using my voice.
right?
I
It's
literally just
so,
did that to the men. I'm like, guys, I'm so sorry that I've taken up this time of your life
right?
talking.
It's so subconscious that we do it
the
all the
hell?
time.
Oh my Lord. Okay, over.
30 years ago, I began compiling a list of unsolved problems that I had no idea how to solve. Eventually, the list grew to 12. And when I first mentioned the beginning of this list to a psychologist, he would happen to be the chief psychologist at Harvard. He said, Barry, he says, I can't help you solve those problems because nobody knows how to solve those problems. Turned out I had a list of 12 problems that have plagued humankind since the dawn of recorded history that had never been solved. And I can rattle them off. And the very first one is violence. Violence, oppression, injustice, corruption, poverty, ignorance, alienation, abuse, uh, despair. Oh, yeah, despair, suffering, alienation, and terrorism. That's my current list of 12. And I don't know how to solve them, but neither does anybody else. They've never been solved in the annals of human history, even though there are proposals on paper on what we have to do to solve them. Enlightenment never happened. And yes, I feel helpless because not only can I not solve them, nobody else can either. Nobody else has solved them either.
But you know what, Barry?
But
You're right. I mean, nobody knows how to solve them, but I think that most of us can agree that at least the first step is bringing them into awareness. And
absolutely.
that's where we are now.
I made a list and I refined the list. I eventually grew to a dozen. And it's like the whack-a-mole problem. If you focus on any one of them and try to fix one of them, the side effect is to make some of the others worse. They're all related as systemic problems, and they all have to be solved ensemble. If you try to solve any one of them, you tend to move the problem elsewhere in that collection of whack-a-mole, dozen whack-a-moles.
Hmm. Hmm.
And like I said, I've been thinking about that for 30 years. It's published. It's published up on the internet. It's been published there since I forget when I first published it.
So for me, the important part about that is as we're bringing something into awareness, we have to make it a practice to look at all sides of that particular story. Like what I tried to do, and I just talked about the time that I was groped, where the embarrassment came in, where the violence came in, where the other people in the story came in, to be able to take smaller chunks within one story, taking one story at a time that might fall into one of the categories you talked about as being the problems, but then really going deeply and getting all the little particulars because they each affect something else.
And I listed abuse as one of the dozen. And if you look up abuse on Wikipedia, there's like 120 different species of abuse listed. There's sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, economic abuse. Abuse all by itself is a whole study of 12 dozen species of abuse. And that's just one of 12 different varieties of unsolved problems. So, yeah, welcome to the club where we all are suffering from these unsolved problems since the dawn of recorded history.
Yeah.
I'll
But
just
perhaps,
add, sorry, Gail, go ahead.
I was just going to say, perhaps having, even if it's a small community of people that are somewhat like-minded, but can collaborate together, maybe that will give us some peace in this world. Over.
Well, I think there's something in what you say about having that small group, because I think those small groupings are really important because I think we have to simplify things and like
I
even
think.
and you just get like when Barry talks about all the different kind of abuses,
Mm-hmm.
start at the simplest. So what is abuse? And then you just very slowly build out instead of what I find most people who are successful in this patriarchal society they want to jump ahead to the end result and get the
Mm,
answer.
right, right. Yeah, it's all about just arriving at the conclusion and not the journey. The journey can be
Right.
important.
The journey is really important. So my suggestion is start in the small.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think today was probably one of the most useful calls that I've heard for so many different reasons. And anybody can plug into the piece that was best for them and take it and move with it, which is what we need to do because we all have our role. Whereas what I've witnessed in these spaces being more dominated by the masculine within
Mm-hmm.
men and women, to be clear, is that they want to do it all. They
Yeah,
have to do the whole thing.
yeah.
First, let me build it, get it ready, then you can use it and play with it. And the feminine is more creative and emergent.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Yeah.
just like to
Oh, go ahead.
mention, so like when I took psychology in college, I learned that it seems like a lot of problems are approached from a medical model that okay, these drugs will help you get through this or whatever, but there's other psychological models, but I think there's a tendency for people to want to rely on experts to provide solutions, and the solutions are in the community. If,
Mm-hmm.
if there's a small group of people who meet once a week or so to talk about things like this and they can trust each other, there are emergent bottom-up solutions. One thing I tried a while ago was called reevaluation counseling, which is small groups, people in pairs sharing their experiences with each other, helping them following certain rules. And then there's all kinds of pros and cons to that specific method, but I think we definitely need creativity in trying different options. So, like, this could be a model to start with, the kind to help people improve their sensitivity, because that's what I feel today, the sensitivity to your stories. And I hope that it can have some benefit going forward, however we want to take it. Thank you.
So Kayla, I really wanted to thank you. I think I did it earlier, but you were kind of the impetus for me being here today, and I've really enjoyed it. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much. And Barry, if I was a little hard on you at first, I apologize, but I had a lot of emotions going on about
Don't sweat.
that call. So thank you for tolerating that, and I have a lot of respect for that. So
If there's one
thank
thing
you
you
guys.
will not tolerate, it's intolerance.
Yeah, I mean, Josh is difficult. I think we all can kind of agree on that. And he basically made me not want to come back after the first time I joined. And so Kayla, I can't believe you've made it this long with with that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. Oh, okay. So I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate the world around people like that. You know what I mean? So it's kind of been my personal journey at the moment, just very personal.
Welcome to the human condition.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, as a meta comment, Glenn, who was very active in the chat, had indicated initially he would join us on Saturday today. But later on, he did say he was going to probably show up tomorrow versus today. So, we're nowhere close to really fully fleshing out our mutual understanding of this issue. So, I do believe if Glenn shows up, we'll have some interesting conversation then as well. So I have no idea what to expect. I have no expectations, no agenda, except to let people speak about difficult topics. And let's see how we can grow towards mutual understanding as a first step.
Sam, just real quickly before I go back on mute and go into the shower, like I put in the chat, if it's possible that you can download this and get this into the chat as soon as possible, I don't know if he's actually going to look at it or maybe he'll read the transcript, but it might save a lot of time or at least, fill everybody in on where we've progressed.
Right. While we're musing about this, in my own thought, and I might be an asshole for even thinking this, but I was very curious as far as women's voices are concerned. I'd be very curious to hear from Kusela if she had actually seen that video. I suspect she hasn't.
Probably not.
Anyway, sorry for being an asshole, but yeah, I'll try and get this.
That's not being an
That's
asshole.
not
And
an
I was
asshole.
thinking the exact same thing.
Hey
I
Sam,
also know
remember?
why
I'll
she
tell you
won't.
when you're being an asshole.
I tell him all the time too. Just so you know.
Thank you, Stacey.
You're welcome.
Fist bump.
Now I'm getting triggered.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
Okay, I will try and get this up as soon as possible. It'll astonish you as soon as my machine will render this, I'll put it up there, okay? Uh, I'll try and do that. And then I look forward to conversation with you guys tomorrow. Hopefully you guys will be here. Yeah.
Hey, I just want to say, Barry, Eric, Sam, Kayla, Stacy, thank you for entertaining me.
Thanks for joining us.
You guys tomorrow, Gail.
I won't be
will
able to make it
try. I
tomorrow.
will try. I have to work tomorrow, but not in the morning, so we'll see if I'm up for it. I will try. This has
Can I
been
make
fun.
another pointy point? Pointy point?
Never.
Okay, then I'll
Yes.
say it tomorrow. Okay, never mind.
What? I'm kidding. Jeez.
Eric had pointed out that today, at least numerically, we're three men, three women.
Yeah.
We're still far ways from having the women feel comfortable because
There's
you
Oh,
an
yeah.
notice the
search.
women's videos are not
It's
on.
officially the
Only
1 year
only the
anniversary.
men's videos are on.
Yep.
I think there's a
That's a
lot
whole
that
nother
still needs to
topic.
be. Yes,
Well, that's
exactly.
out of
We need to get
respect.
our makeup on and do our
Yeah.
hair. And God dang, it was 8 in the morning on a Saturday. I just worked till like almost 11 last night. Yeah, I was tired. So I
And have a great
just
day, everybody.
imagine what I look like. Just you could just imagine me. I look like, Shrek, basically. Just yeah.
For the record, Gail doesn't look like Shrek.
Shrek's a
And
male.
for the record, Josh, I'm not Asian. Not that that was
What?
an insult necessarily, but like he totally. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I really wanted to
exactly.
say that to him. I'm sorry, guys. I should let that go. I know I should. I should let it go. I'm gonna try. I'm not. No, no. No. I'm gonna say something. Oh,
Well, again,
Lordy.
I am also thanking all of you guys. Hopefully, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
A good Saturday.